and the women became pregnant, and they bare large giants whose height was 3,000 cubits. Elves, don't even ask me exactly how tall that is, because it's too tall. Okay, when I tell you, they said the giants consumed all the work and toil of men. Okay, so there's an ancient banned book that talks about watchers, world trees, and destroyed civilizations. And y'all want to know what it reminded me of? Avatar. Yeah, because Avatar just dropped their third movie, and the deeper I was looking into it, I was like, this is giving the Book of Enoch. Yeah, that's how I got here, because I'm like, wait a minute, we have, a different civilization, watchers, beings that descended from the sky, what they call sky people, came and pretty much destroyed a whole civilization. Then the trees were cut down, the trees that connected to the heavens, they were cut down. And I'm like, there's a lot going on. So I think it's time that we start a series on the Book of Enoch so that we can learn and we can grow together, because that's what this channel is about. I'm going to be dropping videos weekly as we grow this community. This channel is all about asking the questions, being open-minded, thinking outside the box, going towards the unanswered, because I think there's so much that they teach us that we don't necessarily put into use, when there's information all around us that does show us that everything that we've been told, there's a little lie behind it. There's something that's off, and the real question is why. So let's get into some of this, starting off with the first Book of Enoch. And if you guys want to follow me on socials or join a private group chat, the link is in the bio. And if you want to dive a little bit deeper, I also have 50 Forbidden Mysteries that goes into a plethora of topics that you can do research on that just are completely mind-blowing, that they never taught us in school. But back to this. So starting off with the first Book of Enoch, right? It's interesting how in chapter 2 it says, observe everything that takes place in the sky, how the lights don't change their orbits, and the luminaries which are in heaven, how they all rise and set in order, each in its season, proper timing, and don't transgress or defy their appointed order. Isn't that interesting how, they've always taught us about, constellations, and it's interesting how we change from the lunar calendar over to the Gregorian calendar, and it's almost been a way to kind of shift us away from the truth of the world, because we're following calendars that don't even align with what's in the skies, and the skies are supposed to be what lead us, what tells us what time it is, the world that we're living in is supposed to align us. And by changing things and resetting history, it's actually misaligning us or taking us away from what we're supposed to be rooted in. Now, I'm not about to put y'all to sleep and just read everything, but where it got interesting for me was in book 1, chapter 6, where we start talking about the giants, because it's so crazy how even through the Smithsonian, even through all of the discoveries of all the skeletons and all the bones, they act like, oh no, giants didn't even exist. Even though we have sequoia trees, we have Devil's Tower, we have all of these different places with these huge trees that looked as if they could have connected to the heavens, connected to beyond the firmament. But all of a sudden they say, nope, there's no dome, there's no firmament, there's no as above, so below. Even though the founder of NASA himself had it written on his tombstone, all of these different things are just like right in our faces, truth hidden in plain sight. Wow. But nevertheless, Book of Enoch, Book 1, chapter 6, it says, and it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, in those days were born to them beautiful and fair daughters. And the angels, the sons of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come, let us choose wives from among the children of men. Y'all, when I tell you, and they all answered, they said, let us all swear an oath and all bind ourselves by mutual curses, because they knew that they were supposed to come and observe. Okay, they were supposed to come and watch, but instead they decided to say, we're just going to go ahead and swear together and bound ourselves by mutual curses. And guess what? 200, just like the 190 craters that have been found on earth, right, on land, and the 10 that they say are in the water, 200 descended in the days of Jared in the summit of Mount Hermon, and they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual curses on the act, because they knew they had no business coming down here to go ahead and mate. And this is even in Genesis. They talk about it in the beginning of Genesis. That's how the Nephilim were created, because the sons sons of God came down here and they chose wives and they made giants, and God was not pleased because they were supposed to come and watch over, but instead of watching over, they started to teach everybody. And where it really starts to snap, it says, and all of them together, this is chapter 7, all of them together went and took wives for themselves, each choosing one for himself, and they began to go into them and to defile themselves with them. Okay. And this is in Genesis 2, where it says Noah was 500 years old and Noah begat Shem and Ham and Japheth. And it goes into the whole mix of how the Lord was not good with that because they weren't supposed to mix their flesh. And then it says, and the angels taught them charms and spells and the cutting of roots and made them acquainted with plants. And the women became pregnant and they bare large giants whose height was 3,000 cubits. Elves, don't even ask me exactly how tall that is because it's too tall. Okay, when I tell you, they said the giants consumed all the work and toil of men because y'all were supposed to come down here and help people out and just watch over, make sure everybody was all right. But instead, you decided to just go ahead and make whole new people. Now the originals don't even know what to do. It's giving AI. It's giving takeover. It's giving a reset of history. It's giving that's not what was supposed to happen. I'm getting hyped because the more you read the Book of Enoch, the more you start to understand that our whole history has consistently evolved and changed, and yet the history that we've been taught and told is nothing like it. So it says, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish and to devour one another's flesh and drank the blood of Jesus. What? Why isn't this in the Bible? Is it because it's true? Is it because it's so specific? Because they say that this book specifically, along with many other books, are taken out of the Bible because they are myths, because they're mythical. Maybe they're satire. But is that the case, or is this just the raw, real deal? Is that why we're not able to access that? I mean, obviously we have the book, but imagine how much you have to go through to find these texts or find out that these are the texts that were not included in the Bible. So if this is what we have access to, think about the 53 miles of archives in the Vatican. What don't we have access to? What's in those books? Because they always say in the Vatican, they have aliens, they have everything about advanced tech about thousands of years ago, all the civilizations. Like, humanity will mess around and think that like we're the first people, like, oh, we just evolved from the ice ages and this is as great as it's gotten. But when you look at Tartarian civilization, when you look at the way that the world has been set up, how can we not even ponder or assume that there have been many civilizations before us, many floods before us, where many different civilizations have been wiped out or God has been displeased and decided to start over? Even the conversation regarding Noah's Ark, it shows us time and time again how he's just had to start from scratch because humanity consistently acts up. So it's just so interesting to me how we like to think that we're the first and we're the only when there's all these books. And I think the truth of the matter is that the people in power that tell us what to believe, I think they really know that. And chapter 8 is when they really start snapping. Now, if you're enjoying this, please remember to subscribe because this is just the beginning. We're going to be going so much deeper into this series. But it says, and Azel, one of the 200 that descended down, taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates and taught them about metals of the earth and the art of working them and bracelets and ornaments to use, and the use of antimony and the beautifying of the eyelids and all kinds of precious stones. Now think about this. In the beginning, right? In the beginning of the Bible, in the very first part of Genesis, like people were not even supposed to eat, like Adam and Eve were not even supposed to eat from the tree of life, like the fruit. They weren't even supposed to eat that because they weren't even supposed to know that they were naked. Everything was supposed to be given onto them and they were supposed to just enjoy the labor and the fruits of God. They were not even supposed to be exposed to so much information. And I mean, to each their own. Some people will believe that, enlightenment is necessary in order for evolution to exist. However, God's word, if you believe, is number one. So when you're going against that, it only gets worse. And this says, that they just taught them everything beyond what they were supposed to know based upon God's word. And says, and there was great impedity, and they turned away. Please don't come for me if I pronounce that wrong. And they turned away from God and committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. And this is also talked about in Matthew 5, right? And they talked about, how they were taught the casting of spells and root cuttings and, to release spells. And they were taught about astrology. Like, astrology in and of itself was not necessarily something that we were supposed to know about. They were taught about constellations, portents, the knowledge of the clouds, the signs of the earth, the signs of the sun, the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. Yo, when I tell y'all, there is so much, the way, the words, the spells, the things that we're consistently taught, we don't even understand the gravity of our speech, the gravity of the things that we do. We don't even understand the depth of the power in which we have access to, but even more so, how we misuse it. It just goes so much deeper. Now let's take a pause on Enoch, because I know that there's a lot to digest there, and I just went in quite a few different circles. But when you try to correlate this over to Avatar, you're talking about forbidden knowledge. So we're talking about technological corruption, because the sky people come down and they think that they know better. So they think that they're going to go ahead and teach. Like, we can take this even far back to like Pocahontas, where it's like you go into a civilization and you're like, oh, you know what? This is barbaric. They're savages. So I think that I can teach them and go beyond. And the truth is that, the earth becomes corrupted. So then they're taught advanced tech because they get access to weapons. The people that become avatars that mix up with them, right? They go in to try to infiltrate their civilization. And then the avatars, they get access to these weapons. They get access to this new technology. But as you look through the different movies that go through, it only gets worse with time. What are we seeing in the real world? That the more access there is to power, to money, to greed, to technology, to AI, it's only getting worse with time. More lives lost, more war, more violence, more this, that, and the third, because it's all an excess of corruption. It's absolutely outrageous. And it's not that knowledge itself is evil, but it's knowledge without wisdom causes imbalance. That's where the collapse comes through, because when you're given all this information that leads you onto power, but you don't know exactly how to balance it, and it causes all types of disturbance, nothing good comes about. So then when you go deeper into it and you look at like Pandora, there's the over mining, the ecosystem, like the planet responds because they cut down the tree. They remove the disconnection from Awa, and you look at what happened with the giants and the Nephilim. They say that these trees, these huge giant trees that we see, all of these stumps supposedly that exist all throughout the world, they connected over to the heavens. But because these people lacked wisdom, the giants, humanity lacked wisdom, they were cut off from source. They were cut off from knowledge because they didn't know how to handle it. So they ended up destroying it. Even if it was unintentional, they lost access to it. Mind y'all, we're only in the first couple of chapters. We're only this much into the book, and so much has already happened. Mind you, there's a whole intro, okay? And in this small portion, the pattern is already set. You're watching knowledge arrive before wisdom. You're seeing humanity get access by the watchers, because the watchers become participants. Then they go from observing to teaching, and people start taking in information, getting power. And we've watched that domino effect occur up until today, to where we have so much access, so much information, more than ever, but the wisdom has not caught up yet. And you know what's inevitable? Corruption, collapse. And that's exactly what we're experiencing. And y'all want to know what's crazy? The symbolism with the trees being cut down, both in Avatar and in the real world, because they say in the book that God was displeased, so they cut down the trees. And guess what that was? Cutting down access to source, access to memory, access to alignment. And it's the same thing that happened in Avatar, because once they started to cut down the trees, like, people were losing their lives before they even knew what was happening. There was so much that occurred before the system could even react, and everything, like, just like in humanity in the real world, like, it's a parallel mirror effect, that once that knowledge was attainable, but because they didn't have the wisdom to know what to do with it, everything got destroyed, everything collapsed, and all the innocent people were the one who suffered the most. And just like till this day, there's so much about our own history, about our roots, about our DNA, about our bloodlines that we have no access to. We have no true memory because the information has been cut off because we didn't know the wisdom. We didn't have the wisdom to know how to preserve it. We were just so greedy to get access to information. We were busy learning. You were learning spells, but you didn't even know what to do with them. You didn't even know the why, the cause. And that's what this channel is all about, asking the questions, the why. This is my first YouTube, so please bear with me because I know I went in so many different circles, but I am so excited for this series because this just goes to show y'all how much there is to learn, how much there is for us to discuss, and we are just getting started. And this is why we're stopping here because one, that was a lot, and two, these beginning chapters are the ignition point, but then we're going to get into where the consequences begin, where there are the warnings and all of the conversations that evolve to mirror the world that we live into today and the consequences of all the actions that came from the beginning of time, as far as we know, at least as far as the time that we have access to so far. So let me know, when it comes to the Book of Enoch, are you reading it? Are y'all going to read along with me? Have you already read through? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And do you think that this is mythical, or is it actually a lot more true than the real text that people follow today when it comes to the Bible? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Per usual, this is all alleged. We're just going based off the info that we have access to. I can't confirm or deny any information, but I definitely implore you to do your research. I'm so excited to see all of your point of views. One thing I love about knowledge is the fact that we can all read the same thing and have so many different interpretations because we are learning. Okay, we're growing. So let me know what you've read, what you know, or if you're starting from a clean slate like me and you're learning, drop your thoughts. I will be back. So get ready for part 2 where we go a bit deeper. Like, follow, stay for some more tea. And like I said, link in bio, join the private group chat, follow me on socials, make sure you subscribe. And most importantly, if you want to dive into other awesome topics, grab a copy of 50 Forbidden Mysteries. The link is in the bio for all of that. Like, follow, stay for some more tea. See you soon.